I'm knitting again. Yeah, that's exciting. Hello. Oh my goodness, we are back. Knit with Hannah is here, and oh my goodness, thank you so much for all of your caring thoughts and well wishes and everything. I have been gone, but yes, I'm back, and I wanted to talk today about how I'm back knitting, because knitting rhythm is something it is something that's very important, and mine disappeared and I had to let it go. I had to. It's just part of life, isn't it? We're going through these phases, and life very much happened to me, and I didn't really have any control. And while I wanted to knit and I missed it, it just wasn't available to me. For those of you who don't know, my fingers were very swollen. My brain just wasn't working like it should because I was so exhausted trying to heal the rest of my body. So yeah, and I've had very dry skin. That's something I'm going to talk about in another video, how I've worked with the fingers after they've been healing. And I mean, even dry skin in the autumn and winter can be a problem, can't it? So yeah, we'll definitely talk about that in another video. But let's talk today about the knitting rhythm and how I've found it again. And it can be such an important thing, because we all have different rhythms in life, and it's associated with music. And music happens note by note, sweet by sweet, and it just makes sense that one beat follows the other. And I'm sure Beethoven had blocks. All of these great composers, there are times when they don't compose. I'm sure that happens. But we see their music as a whole, and we look at it and we go, wow, that's a lifetime, that's an amazing achievement. So in some respects, it's always good to look at that big picture too. And knowing that it was still there for me, I mean, it's not going away. Knowing that it would always be there for me because it's just something I've known I can return to, and the muscle memory knows when it's okay. So there was definitely that part of me that said, don't worry about it, it will be back, it's okay. So there were lots of things that I did to help, because it was particularly interrupted in 2023, not just most recently, but also when I had COVID in April. I was very tired in January as well, and that was quite an interesting time. I actually picked up weaving then, just to say, what's something I can do with wool that doesn't feel quite such a brain squeeze? And that was quite an interesting time. Let me get it. I was just experimenting with a few things, and literally over a couple of weeks I made some interesting woven pieces just from some yarn that I had around, and there you go, that's that. And it wasn't any rule to it, there wasn't any end point to it, it was just, shall I have that instead? And it felt somehow easier than knitting at that point, because it was so much shove it through the rest of the strands and then shove it back. It wasn't what's each stitch doing. And I found the process of setting up the looms as well very rhythmic, very cathartic in a way. I'd done this in my previous life as a teenager too, so definitely I know, again, it's something that's there for me because I've done it before. It didn't feel difficult, I wasn't learning something new, it was just, that's the rhythm. So definitely other creative expressions were there, but knitting wasn't quite right. When I did come back to knitting in January and February last year, I was knitting in garter stitch. It was a very important point that I knew was right for me then. I got thick needles out, big yarns, and I just knitted scarves. and I used different colours so that we could take some photographs for the website. So there was an end point, there was a reason for it, and it, oh goodness me, it felt good. Here's another row of garter stitch. That's easy. So in that respect, the knitting rhythm can come back in ways you don't expect. And that consistency brought back a bit more creativity and encouraged me to do other things as well. So that's something. So in the beginning, especially in the autumn, I couldn't bring back longer projects. I couldn't bring back those bigger rhythms. So I had to focus on the smaller ones. And when I was after it coming back, I had to understand and figure out how I could make those individual stitches to actually make it happen in a bigger way. It was very simply, will my finger weight make one stitch? Will it make another one? And will my fingers like it if I hold this yarn and make a third stitch? And it was that simple. So one day I simply cast on. And it felt like awkward knitting because my fingers weren't quite right. I was very wary of holding wool because of the dry skin, but I picked up wool which has alpaca in it, and it's actually this felted tweed Aran. It's slightly thicker than the felted tweed DK, obviously, so it's not quite so gnawing at the joints in the finger, but it still has the alpaca in it, so the slightly thicker yarn feels more comfortable in the joints and the bends of the fingers. And because it has alpaca in it, it's got more natural oils that kind of lubricate as you're knitting. It's really, you don't really notice it, but if you knit with this and then you knit with a wool that doesn't have alpaca in it, then you may well notice it. I certainly do. I'm very well aware of it. If it's a oily wool, I will notice. So I will go for that now, and that's what I'm going to knit with. And that's what I started knitting with. I picked this up. It was part of the blanket that we did in the blanket knit along. So yeah, this has been something that I've been leaning to and knitting with in the last few weeks since I've been able to pick it up again. It's literally been halfway through December that I started knitting again. So this hasn't been happening for a long time. I had to put it down in September. I could not do it. My fingers would not allow me. And the dryness has only really started going away since halfway through December. So this feels like a really big achievement and a really big celebration. It's not so much an achievement, it's a celebration. To say, yeah, oops, bang, I'm knitting again. Yeah, that's exciting. So that first session was definitely awkward. Was the second session going to feel as awkward? Quite possibly. And I do want to make note here, I did 10 minutes. Then I put hand cream on, and 2 hours later I did another 10 minutes. And I put hand cream down, and I tried to keep calm. Okay, this is fine, don't worry about it. If your hands are dry tomorrow, then you know why. So I was doing all of the things that made it feel like this was going to be okay. It was like a second beat. That first session and that second session kind of went, you got 2 beats there. Will a third awkward knitting session actually make it feel more like a melody? And those stitches that felt really awkward one at a time became short knitting sessions. And those knitting sessions put together became days of knitting, because I was knitting 3 or 4 times a day. And that became a rhythm of a project, casting on, maybe doing some ribbing like I am here, then doing the knitting in whatever pattern I was going to do. And I was doing a simple knitting to start with. And then, hey presto, you get to cast off. And then that casting off becomes sewing the seam or doing whatever. And then it becomes a full project that I've finished. So that is a rhythm in itself. It's just a little group of things that you do. And you know me, the beginning, middle and end is all part of the knitting process. I love the casting on. I love, even before that, the selecting of the colour of the yarn and choosing which pattern I'm going to knit. That's all a big part of it. I make sure that the choosing the pattern and the yarn doesn't take 3 weeks. I make sure that the choosing of the knitting yarn and the pattern takes more like 3 minutes or half an hour at the most. That's just who I am. And to be honest, I've had 3 months to think about what I want to knit next. So yeah, it's taken a long time and I've actually finally got there. And I just said, okay, this is where I'm going. I'm picking one of those things that I was thinking about and I'm going to knit it. So the casting on, the beginning, the middle and the end. And then I do love the finishing parts because it just feels like tying the whole thing in a big red bow. So that's the final part of the rhythm. It's the sewing up the seam and it's the weaving in the ends and saying, I have a finished piece. So I do have some finished pieces here in December, but I can't show you them yet. Sorry. So I am knitting more things with this Aran yarn and I'm not showing you yet. Okay. So when I was looking for that rhythm, I had to begin by realising how much was there already. I've been watching other people knitting and being creative in so many other ways. I'd watched knitting videos on YouTube, I'd watched sewing, I'd watched drawing, I'd watched creating on the iPad with a pencil, I'd watched people bookbinding, embroidery, all sorts of different things. So just to think about the senses, my eyes, my ears, and just the literal sense of creativity and familiarity was experiencing the rhythm because I was watching other people do it. So I knew that that was there. And when you're watching other people do these things, it's like there were experiments in sport like 20, 30 years ago, possibly even many years before that, where they said, imagine and envision yourself playing this amazing basketball game or running that fabulous race, rather than actually train. And those who were envisioning it had just as much experience and muscle tone as those who were actually training every day. So there's a lot said for imagining yourself doing these things. It can be quite heartbreaking if you go into it knowing, oh my goodness, I can't believe I can't do this, isn't that dreadful? But no, just know that it will come back. Know that it's come back before. Know that the returning to that creativity in any form is going to be there for you. It's part of life, and people, I know so many people don't realise it. Oh, I'm not creative. But everybody's creative and it's there for everybody, just to grasp and say, yeah, I'm in. So that rhythm is already there. And watching other people and seeing other people do this, YouTube has opened doors to people who never had that opportunity before. When I was ill, let's call it decades ago, because that's what it was, I would be in bed and my mum would be indulging her creative side next to me on the chair or on the sofa. because yes, we were that organised. I had a sofa in my bedroom. But I was in bed for months at a time, so it does make sense that worked like that. But she would be sitting there knitting, she'd be sewing, she'd be doing English paper patchwork, she, mending things and putting buttons on and all sorts of stuff. And it all just helped me realise that was going to be there for me too when I was feeling better. So you're already seeing those longer rhythms of the beginning, the middle, the end, the start, the I'm getting there, the process of actually doing the thing, and then the finishing off just ties that red bow at the end. Then there's this point where the acceptance of not being there and not doing it for yourself moves into this kind of inner clamour to say, I want that too. I'm almost ready. Yeah, I want it. Me too. Yeah, I'm in there. Get me going. And then, it really feels like it's getting louder and louder and louder. And then that pulse reaches out and says, I'm in. I really am in. Let me do it as well. So it really does start to happen. And then those phases just slowly start to build up. And this is the interesting thing. Let me just say that word again, phases. Because over a lifetime, you say, yeah, I was a knitter. There you are. In bed as an 80-year-old, thinking about your life. I'm going to do some gardening tomorrow, I'm going to carry on knitting or whatever. And then you think, hang on, I've been knitting for 8 decades. Isn't that astounding? If you look at the smaller pieces, you think, yeah, but for 2 years I didn't knit at all. But as someone who's had an 8-decade-long life, you might be sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I've been a knitter all my life because I started when I was 3. I want to be thinking that. I'm not thinking how awful it was that for 3 months when I was a 48-year-old, I didn't knit. That's irrelevant in a lifetime of knitting. So these phases, they go in and out. Knitter, not so much knitting. Knitting, not so much knitting. And that's fine. Because these longer phases just reach out and attach themselves to the rhythm in different ways. So creativity is part of our lives. And that rhythm is always going to be there. And whether you're knitting or you're taking a couple of months to sew a patchwork blanket, you're still being creative, and that rhythm is going to draw you back in different ways and for different reasons. And just because that pulse inside you is saying, I want that now too. Me too. Yes, please. Come on. I want it. And it's there. It feels so good, doesn't it? So, yes, I've been ill. I'm still taking knitting slowly. I've knitted a few things since December because you know what I'm like? When I come back to knitting, I want to see the beginning, the middle, and the end. I don't want to see the beginning and then the middle barely gets started because the middle is so long. So my beginning and middle, while I enjoy making mini goals and saying I'm got there, I'm getting there, I'm doing this, I'm getting there, I have started a longer project now. And I think if I'd started that longer project right when I started doing this kind of casting on and finishing pretty quickly, I would have been kind of upset. I would not have finished it yet. I wanted to see myself actually get to a finish without knowing that I don't know what would have happened. I could have got to a point where in that first week of knitting, I just had this WIP, this unfinished object, work in progress, sat there in a knitting bag for the next 3 months because knitting couldn't continue for some reason or another. So I wanted to say, right, at least if I finish this project, then I know that I've knitted something, even if I have to let it go for another couple of months. Then I would have felt like I'd actually done something and I could use what I'd knitted. So that felt like That's why I pick up the small projects when I'm restarting my knitting, or when I'm feeling a little bit not sure how long I can knit for, let me just test the water kind of thing. So the small knits is definitely something I'd recommend for you. If you're in a similar position, you're kind of going, cool, I feel that urge again, I really want to start knitting again. The yarn and the needles are calling me. Definitely start with a small knit. Leaping in with a big jumper with 6 pieces to it or whatever, it might feel a bit much, and the nerves will probably be there saying, how far can I actually get? Because you are testing the water. Now, if you'd like these kind of reminders to say, where am I? How's my knitting going? What am I doing? And to just kind of keep drawing you back, because that's what I needed. All of those 3 months when I wasn't knitted, I had to search out content and say, that's knit worthy, that's knit worthy, that's creative, those colours are something I enjoy, I like the way that's gone through a beginning, middle, end. All of those things I had to search out for myself. If you'd like something to inspire you to say, yes, that's there, I know it's there, it's a constant, Hannah's going to keep inspiring me, yes, follow me on YouTube. But I also have something available just this week on my course platform for the Knit with Hannah Academy, and that is 2024 Knitting Magic. Every month starting January the 8th next week, that's next Monday, I'm going to drop in a highlight, a best bit, a most loved section from one of my courses. So you'll have a best bit from one of the courses next January, and then the first Monday of February you'll have another best bit, most loved part of a different course. We're going to do that every month through the year, and then as we move through the year, I'm not going to say you are completely overwhelmed and now you have everything from every single course that you ever wanted. It is small bites saying, do you fancy coming back? Do you want to be nudged? Do you want to have this little suggestion that you start knitting again? All of those nudges and those inspirations can create that rhythm for you, because you know there's something there every month. So yeah, I'm a knitter, and I know I'm a knitter because I signed up for this. So you can pay monthly for it, or you can pay as an annual fee, and then you're there till December without having to pay any more again, and you get a month free. So that's a good thing. And it's new this year. I thought I'd put it together. I was thinking about it last year and it never actually happened. But it's happened now. And you have best bits of more courses. So yeah, you're going to enjoy that. I've definitely put more content in the academy over the last year. So you've got even better bits from different courses. And you will enjoy that, I hope. Do go over there and have a look. I'll leave a link in the description. And I do hope you found this knitting rhythm talk inspiring, because that's what I want from my YouTube videos, is just to say, yeah, knitting's okay. You like it? We like it. Let's keep doing it, shall we? And we don't always have to have knitting tutorials on a Knit with Hannah on a knitting channel here on YouTube. I definitely want to talk about how knitting kind of weaves into life and inspires life in different ways as we move through different phases. So yeah, let's have a chat in the comments. Let me know about how your knitting rhythm is at the moment. Are you in the beginning, the middle, or the end of a project? Are you casting on? Are you getting inspired by the yarns right at the beginning? All of those little things. I'd love to know where you are in your knitting. And of course it's January and I'm back for the first time. For the first time in forever. And yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? I'm so pleased to be back. And I don't want to stop talking. Go and have a look at 2024 Knitting Magic. And I will see you again soon. And we're going to talk about all sorts of different things over the next few months. And yes, I'll throw in a knit along. Why not? Okay, See you again soon. Bye for now. Happy knitting.